Why are they dragging up allegations on me from 15 years ago by promising women money if they lie? And after an extensive investigation, contacting over 1,000 women, they found 3 girls who were prepared to lie. What about the 997 who said I'm a nice guy? This is a setup. This is a stitch up. And do not buy their garbage for a second that they give a single about the young women inside the UK, because they don't care. Our streets run with blood. Women are unsafe. People get stabbed to death. Crime is out of control. Does the media talk about murderers every day? No. Does the media talk about drug dealers every day? No. Does the media talk about the crime committed by the migrants we let in every day? No. The media talks about me every day. Why? Because I highlight the problem. Not because I am a problem, but because I tell you there's a problem.
When the government fires back with a legal response so serious that you end up asking the judge for another 2 weeks, things clearly aren't moving the way you hoped. That's the situation surrounding the Tate brothers after the judge granted them extra time to respond to the government's strong opposition to their request for pretrial release. The Tate brothers wanted to be released while the case moves forward, but the government pushed back hard, basically saying, "Nope, and we've got the receipts." That response appears to have changed the timeline fast. The hearing was reportedly supposed to happen tomorrow, but the brothers went back to the judge asking for more time to prepare their response. Now they have been given another 2 weeks, and that's where things get interesting. This doesn't prove what the final outcome will be, but it does show that the government's arguments gave the defense plenty to deal with. So what exactly did prosecutors put forward, and why did the defense decide it needed more time? Let's break down what happened. I can see why they may have believed President Trump could somehow help get them released. After all, according to reports, Trump administration officials raised the Tate brothers situation with Romanian officials. Richard Grenell, Trump's special envoy, reportedly discussed the case with Romania, and the brothers were later allowed to leave the country while their legal proceedings there remained pending. So put yourself in the Tate brothers' position. They may have been thinking, all right, private planes, powerful connections, and the US government knows our situation. That could help explain why their arrest in connection with the UK's case may have come as such a major shock. When UK authorities pursued the case and the US honored the legal request, suddenly those assumed political connections didn't appear to offer the protection they may have expected. Originally, the Tate brothers suggested, well, this is some lackey in DOJ. This is not really the DOJ. This is some low-level official who's doing this, not the administration.
Turns out the most popular game of the year that everyone wants to play is Our Life.
It's Our Life, yeah.
Think about it. Everyone's like, GTA 6, GTA 6. In GTA 6, think about it. I'm a big, rich, powerful man who manages to get money, and he goes to jail because he's a rule breaker and isn't afraid to say what he thinks, and he has a hot girl and girls love him, and everybody knows him on the street. He has a good reputation. He doesn't take crap from anybody, and he has fast cars and boats, and he gets to go out there in the world, and he gets to do whatever he wants.
I want to pretend to be him.
That's us.
That's literally me.
So our lifestyle is completely vindicated by the popularity of the game GTA 6.
Yeah, that's very true.
You people are going to sit there with a controller pretending to be me, Andrew fucking Tate.
For thousands of hours of your life. And when you're finished playing, you're still going to be nobody.
So instead of going out there becoming the guy, because those are your choices, you can go out there and become the character from GTA 6 in the real world, or you can sit and LARP online.
They had publicly crossed paths with figures connected to Trump's political world, and Andrew Tate had appeared on a show with Alina Habba where they seemed friendly. But being friendly with political figures is one thing. Having influence over a legal case is something very different. And after the arrest, Andrew Tate reportedly tried to call Alina Habba, according to the New York Times, but she didn't take his call. Now it looks like the political connections the brothers may have believed they had aren't exactly rushing to get involved. That's a major shift from the idea that powerful people in Trump's orbit would simply step in and make this legal problem disappear. I know some people are still saying, no, Trump's gonna let him out. But whatever you think about his DOJ, prosecutors filed a forceful memorandum opposing the Tate brothers' pretrial release. They're clearly taking the government's position seriously. And you may be wondering why officials would want to keep their distance from such a politically explosive case. The Epstein controversy also hangs over American politics, making anything involving serious allegations of sexual misconduct especially sensitive. That doesn't make the Tate case Epstein 2.0, and the allegations and legal proceedings should be judged on their own facts. But politically, why would anyone in the administration want to personally own the decision to push for their release? Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, could also face major political scrutiny if he were seen as intervening on their behalf. And remember what happened in Romania. The Tate brothers went from detention to house arrest, and they were eventually permitted to leave Romania while proceedings continued. Reports said U.S. officials had raised their case with Romanian authorities, but that is different from proving American officials caused their departure. Either way, nobody seems eager to publicly claim responsibility for helping them. Everyone seems to be keeping their distance now. It's the same reason Alina Habba reportedly didn't take Andrew Tate's call after his arrest. Whatever connections the brothers believed they had, very few people seem eager to publicly attach themselves to this legal mess. And look at the demonstrations outside the detention center. The Tate brothers may have expected massive crowds demanding their release, but reports and footage discussed around the case have suggested a much smaller turnout. So if they were waiting for the cavalry to show up, that cavalry doesn't appear to be coming. The public conversation has moved in different directions, while plenty of critics are openly mocking the brothers after years of their top G image and claims of being above ordinary people. Then came the Southern District of Florida. Federal prosecutors filed a court document that I covered in yesterday's video, and they pushed back hard against the brothers' complaints about detention conditions. The Tate brothers argued, "We don't even have access to commissary. They're treating us so terribly. How can you treat a U.S. citizen like this?" But prosecutors basically responded with their own receipts, disputing that picture and arguing that the brothers were actually receiving treatment and accommodations beyond what many detainees in comparable circumstances receive. That's where this courtroom fight gets even messier. The government says the Tate brothers are being held in the SHU, essentially separated from the general population, not as punishment, but for their own safety from other inmates. And then came the commissary dispute. Prosecutors basically said, "You have plenty of commissary. Here are the receipts. Here are the Doritos that you bought." Yes, we're seriously talking about Doritos becoming part of a federal courtroom fight. According to the court filings, prosecutors produced literal receipts showing purchases of items the brothers had suggested they couldn't access. And that's where this gets wild. The filings also challenged claims connected to an expensive yacht called the Obsidian Blade, which had reportedly been presented as being worth millions. So the government's argument paints quite a picture. Prosecutors say the brothers had the Doritos, while disputing claims surrounding the yacht. But the commissary receipts were only one piece of the government's response. Prosecutors came in with additional records and arguments challenging the defense's version of events, and suddenly the timeline changed. The hearing was originally supposed to happen Thursday, the day you're seeing this video, since I'm recording Wednesday night. Instead, that hearing has now been postponed after the Tate brothers' attorneys went back to the judge and asked, "Please give us 2 more weeks." After everything prosecutors put into that filing, the defense apparently decided it needed more time to respond, and now people are asking the obvious question: why the sudden delay? Well, after the federal government came back with a detailed response, the Tate brothers' legal team apparently decided they needed more time to prepare their answer. Instead of rushing into the hearing, they asked for an extension. Here's exactly what the Tate brothers' motion says. On August 10, 2026, the government filed its response to the motion for bond pending extradition proceedings filed by Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate. On August 11, 2026, undersigned counsel reviewed the government's pleading with the Tates in the SHU at FDC. The government's response raises several additional factual allegations to which the Tates would like the opportunity to reply in writing and secure fact witnesses to appear at the hearing. Additionally, the Tates request that this court allows them until August 21, 2026 to file a reply to the government's response and continue the detention hearing until the following week. So according to the motion, the government's response raised, quote, "several additional factual allegations." That's a pretty important detail. In other words, the DOJ wasn't simply recycling the usual arguments about flight risk. Prosecutors introduced additional specific claims and evidence that the defense now says it needs more time to address. They came with receipts, and that changed the battlefield. And I think the bigger shock may not just be what the government brought forward, but the fact that it brought this material forward so aggressively. The Tate brothers may have believed that people inside Trump's political world would be more sympathetic to them. Instead, federal prosecutors are fighting their request for pretrial release and showing they're prepared to go hard in court. That doesn't mean the DOJ is out to get them. It's the government's job to argue its case. But this response clearly isn't the easy ride the defense may have expected. Their main lawyer, who's been speaking publicly, has also represented January 6th defendants and has openly aligned himself with MAGA politics. So perhaps the thinking was, wait, Tates are MAGA. The lawyer is Major MAGA. They got this. But political branding doesn't guarantee favorable treatment in federal court, and with critics making explosive comparisons to Epstein, comparisons that aren't proof of equivalent conduct, politicians have an obvious reason to avoid jumping into this legal firestorm. Why walk straight into that fight unprepared? You don't. So the defense asked for more time to draft a written reply and, according to the motion, locate fact witnesses who could challenge the government's new allegations. And to understand why this matters so much, you have to understand how federal extradition cases work. Under federal precedent, international extradition cases generally come with a strong presumption against bail. That's very different from an ordinary federal criminal case in the United States, where the Bail Reform Act generally governs pretrial detention and release. Extradition proceedings play by a different set of rules, and getting released while that process is underway can be a much tougher hill to climb. In these cases, the person seeking release generally has to overcome serious hurdles. The court considers whether they're a flight risk or a danger to the community, and the defense also needs to show special circumstances that justify bail. That's where the Tate brothers could face a serious argument from prosecutors. The government can point to their international lifestyle, resources, travel history, and public statements when arguing flight risk. And the brothers have spent years publicly showing off expensive cars, private travel, and serious money. They brag about all the Bugattis. I said it right this time, right? All of that flashy branding can suddenly look very different when prosecutors are arguing about whether someone might leave. Bugattis. Remember, that's become a running joke because people keep calling me out for mispronouncing it. I don't know. I was a government employee for 25 years. I couldn't even tell you what a Bugatti is. But expensive cars, private planes, yachts, international connections, that's exactly the kind of lifestyle prosecutors can point to when they're trying to argue that someone has the resources to flee. Then you get to the question of special circumstances. The Tate brothers argue that their global fame actually works in their favor because they're simply too recognizable to disappear. But the government is basically flipping that argument right back around, saying, well, yeah, because you're so rich and powerful and you have all these fans around the world, that's why you're a risk to flee. Same fame, completely different spin. The defense has also pointed to the conditions of their detention in Miami as part of its argument for release. They've complained about commissary access, water quality, and other conditions. But prosecutors fired back hard, disputing those claims and arguing that the brothers have access to commissary and communication with the outside world. And then came one line in the government's brief that really jumped off the page. This is not a Marriott. Yes, that's actually in the filing I discussed in my last video. Looking back, I probably should have named the entire video that. This is not a Marriott. And that's the point. The Tate brothers are used to this flashy, high-flying lifestyle, but detention obviously looks nothing like that. Now, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed they're staying behind bars or that extradition is a done deal. The judge still has to make those decisions. But right now, they're fighting an uphill legal battle, and every extension means more time waiting in detention while this extradition fight plays out. That's the brutal irony here. Asking for more time may help their lawyers prepare a stronger response, but it also means the brothers remain locked up longer while the case crawls forward. So a delay isn't necessarily a win for them. Meanwhile, federal prosecutors can keep hammering the factors. They say make the brothers a flight risk, dual citizenship, major financial resources, international networks, extensive travel history, and access to multiple passports. None of those things automatically proves someone would flee, but prosecutors are putting the meow pieces together to argue that these brothers have resources most defendants could only dream of. So if you're trying to convince a judge that you're not a flight risk, all those years of publicly showing off international travel, money, luxury cars, and connections could come back to haunt you. The Tate brothers' own public image may now be helping prosecutors make their argument. I think the direction of this fight looks pretty clear, although the final decision belongs to the judge. Based on the government's opposition, I wouldn't be surprised if their request for pretrial release is denied. Either way, we'll keep following every development right here on YouTube. Thanks for all the support. Keep the comments coming, nice or not. If you've got something worth discussing, I'll try to respond to as many as I can. Hit the like button, share this with a friend, and I'll see you next time.